Ahoy, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick, Rocco, Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every miniseries, we chart a course through the full filmography of an underdiscussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. Today, we kick off a new journey into the films of Joe Wright and his debut film, Pride and Prejudice, and see how many things have we been a fool about. Nick, how you doing today, my friend?
Oh, are we breaking out the British accents for this one?
He's our first British filmmaker.
After all the Boston accents from the Affleck series, I feel like that's something we need to do.
I agree with you. I was like, he's from London.
Well, I'm not even going to start, because if I start, I can't stop.
I always think about that scene in Forgetting Sarah Marshall where Paul Rudd's character is talking to the Russell Brand character, and he's in huge pain, and he's like screaming, and Paul Rudd just goes, "You sound like you're from London."
Out of snow. Bullshit.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
It's a great movie. One of the best comedies of the 2000s, for sure. 100%.
It is, yeah.
If not the best.
Shame about Russell Brand.
Yeah, very big shame. Holy shit. What a thing.
That was one of those things that, like Marilyn Manson, and everyone's like, oh my God, all this Me Too stuff about Marilyn Manson. It's like, he was basically telling you that every day for years and years and years. Were you not paying attention?
Yeah. Also, but it was also telling us that he was Paul from the Wonder Years. Do you remember that big urban myth when we were growing up? Before the internet was really solid enough where you could look up stuff
I always
like that?
see that meme now, right? Yeah, how it's the picture of what was it, Paul? Josh Saviano, I think.
If you know, man, you're better than I don't know. I don't remember his name.
Pretty sure, because I always thought he was like related to Paul Sorvino, but it's a totally different name. And yeah,
that's some Italian racism from an Italian right there.
Well, I can get away with it.
That's true. Very true.
You can only half or quarter get away with it?
Quarter get away with it. Yeah.
All right.
But I can 75% get away with all Irish racism. So
can't get away with anything. I love Irish racism. So.
But that was the last miniseries where we were doing the Irish racism.
I have to just hold my tongue. Yeah. Well, we kept it pretty well in check.
We did. There are no Irish people, I don't think, and no.
Kelly Riley's not Irish?
Italian people. Oh, maybe she is. That's a very Irish name, and she has very Irish-looking hair.
Very much is, yes. Boy, do I love Kelly Riley.
I was watching this movie, and I was like, where do I know Kelly Riley from?
I kind of I feel the same way, because I don't watch Yellowstone. I know I will eventually. I've heard it's great, but I've heard she's really good on that show. I've seen her in True Detective, but it wasn't a huge role in that. And I saw her in this, and I was like, man, I love Kelly Riley. Where do I know her from?
Yeah, Yellowstone was the thing. I've never watched a full episode of Yellowstone. My parents love it, as most parents do.
My dad, too. Yep.
Yeah. And so I've seen 10 minutes of an episode here or there, and she's been in, I think, every bit of those episodes that I've seen. But the real thing I was thinking of, there's something more recent, or not more recent, more thing I liked and seen all of, which was she was in the most recent Branagh Perot movie, Haunting in Venice.
She's one of them. I haven't seen that yet.
Really good. I really like that movie a lot. She's one of the leads of that movie. But I was looking at her, I was like, regular guy. And I also did not, and I still looked him up. I don't think I really seen him much either. The guy who is her brother, who looks like Ed Sheeran and Eddie Redmayne had a baby together.
Yeah.
Mr. Bigley, or whatever his name.
Mr. Bigley, yeah. He's, weirdly, yeah, he has a face that you recognize, even though I don't know that I've ever actually seen him in anything either.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either.
And I thought I read somewhere that he was actually dating Rosamund Pike before this movie, and then they broke up, and then they had to play this couple that's enamored with each other in this movie. So, yeah, it's always fun.
It's lucky for them that this movie sort of definitely, I guess, sidelines that romance a little bit, as far as them actually interacting with each other,
It does, but they have a lot of scenes together.
Yes.
That had to be something for first-time feature director Joe Wright to have to contend with on set, if it's true. I don't know. I feel like it was a IMDb trivia thing or something. But
yes, we are speaking about Joe Wright's first film, Pride and Prejudice, like I mentioned at the start, adaptation of the Jane Austen novel. Not that many years after an incredibly popular and well-received Pride and Prejudice miniseries that was on BBC starring Colin Firth. So this movie comes out in 2005. It is Joe Wright's debut, as we said. He came from television. It's also very interesting. Keira Knightley, who is the star of this film, had really only done Pirates of the Caribbean when this movie comes out, right? Love Actually and Pirates of the Caribbean come out in the same year, and she goes from Natalie Portman's double in Phantom Menace to a superstar basically overnight. Like, basically, she is a superstar immediately, because everyone is like, who is this beautiful woman who's in this incredibly popular movie? We love her. And so then it kicks off a very long career, one that we'll, I think, probably revisit again, because I believe she's in another one of his movies later on in her career. But like, this is very early on in her career, and I think very interesting.
Already at this point, she's like the name talent in this movie, right? Like, they were looking for a big star. You know, the studio is looking for someone to kind of top line this movie, and they choose Keira Knightley, who at the time, I mean, and that was weird for me too, right? Like, I've said on the show before, this is a period of movies. Like, I was writing about film professionally at the time, previewing stuff like this that was coming out, and I was trying to think about like where she was in all of that. Like, of course, I'd seen her in Pirates of the Caribbean, and I knew of her, but yeah, I mean, I guess this was like, there's a lot of people in this movie, you mentioned this too, that are just about to be huge.
Yes.
That are kind of on the cusp. And some of them, it took a little while longer, right? Like, Carey Mulligan's in this movie. She looks like she's about 12. And you know, she's maybe 5-6 years away from being like the Carey Mulligan that we know now. Like,
she's probably, what, 4 years from an education?
And education, and then Drive, and then,
you
know, Promising Young Woman and everything after that.
Yeah, absolutely. But Joe Wright, he's born August 25th, 1972 in London. So he is from London. His parents were in the arts. He was making Super 8 films when he was a kid. You know, he's got the classic director sort of beginnings, right? He studied at, let's see, Camberwell College of Arts and Central St. Martin's College. He made a short film for the BBC.
He studied at St. Martin's College. He didn't study sculpture at St. Martin's College, though.
Okay. Who studied sculpture at St. Martin's College? Where's that from?
A pulp song, actually referenced in the movie Saltburn, which there's some connective tissue between that and Pride and Prejudice too. But every time I see St. Martin's College,
it shares a few actors. Absolutely,
have to think about the great song "Common People," which you don't know apparently.
It's Common People. I don't know the song super well. Obviously, I saw that movie and Saltburn.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, right. Because she references the song.
She references it directly.
It's about her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about her. Yeah, which is a hilarious line in
that
movie.
My favorite thing in the entire movie. Yeah.
A very weird movie.
So I for my final film analysis papers for my students last semester, I had 2 groups and have them do like a scene breakdown, a scene analysis. You know, tell me what the scene's about, break it down shot by shot. And I had a really, really good student. He's like, I want to do it on Saltburn. I'm going to pick a scene. I was like, just don't pick that scene. And he knew exactly what I was talking about, and he didn't. And great paper, great analysis, and thankfully I didn't have to think about the bathtub. So.
Yeah, the bathtub, you're looking up the bathtub scene there?
Appreciate that very much, that he avoided that one. Or the cemetery scene also.
True, yes. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Saltburn. I just want to say that the movie is so weird not because of all the weird shit that happens in it, mostly because at the end of it, I'm left thinking, did you think I didn't realize that this guy was the bad guy the whole time? Like in the movie, it's so obvious that he's like the snake, and at the end they're like,
agreed,
we're going to reveal to you all of the things he did. I'm like, yeah, obviously.
See, I don't want to spoil the movie because it's worth seeing. I think it's a very good movie.
It's worth seeing.
But I really, really wanted it to not be that, right? I thought they were setting that up the entire time, and I wanted it to be like, no, he just got involved in this world and with these people, and that's what made him that way. It wasn't like, you know, what it ended up being, and because it wasn't that took that movie down a couple pegs for me. But we're on to other classier British films for the moment.
Very classy. He worked in an oil. He spent working for Oil Factory, a British music video production company. It's funny because like it feels like. Obviously, Joe Wright is from a, let's say, upper class, probably, you know, British backing. But there are certain directors who you wouldn't be surprised who are from England who, if they worked at an oil factory when they were younger, you wouldn't be surprised. Like, you told me Ridley Scott worked at an oil factory when he was, 15. I would believe you, probably.
I was enamored with all the sparks and stuff flying around everywhere. Yeah. This is very industrial, the smoke and steam. And what I thought was interesting about that, just looking into Joe Wright, though, so at that time in the 90s, he's making short films, working for a music video production company. I couldn't say, I mean, he must have made some music videos. I couldn't find out what those were. And I watched a lot of MTV and saw a lot of British bands at the time. It was a great time for British music, as we were just talking about, as I rudely interrupted the show for. But also he was working in the like concert roadie business at the time. And so he says a lot of his directorial ideas came from was it the aesthetic and the emotion of the UK rave scene of the late
that's
90s?
What he said. Yep, that's
which
what he says.
is pretty interesting because I don't see that at all in Pride and Prejudice.
No, or really any of his films, I would say that I've seen, but
I mean, some of the, I don't know, the togetherness, the large parties and enclosed spaces kind of feel of things. I don't know, but thought that was an interesting thing that he said, and I listened to a lot of that music in the 90s. I mean, I definitely wasn't cool enough to go to raves, but I liked My Chemical Brothers and Orbital and stuff like that, so I sort of get where he was coming from there. I just didn't necessarily see it so much, and in this movie and the other stuff of his that I've seen. Whereas there are some directors like, oh yeah, this is totally inspired by the rave culture of the UK in the late 90s.
Right, like you would like
a Guy Ritchie would be.
Guy Ritchie, Danny Boyle.
Sure. Matthew Vaughn.
Matthew Vaughn. So I would say Joe Wright's an interesting person because he's coming up in the time when Boyle has broken out, right? When Guy Ritchie has broken out, when UK culture for the first time in a long time is very cool again, right? It is a cool culture to be involved with, right? It's very youth focused. It has permeated the world again in a big way. Lots of bands have broken out all over the world. These directors are darling directors, right? They are indie darlings. They are also breaking out big in mainstream culture as well. And Wright, who, we mentioned he's working for a music video company, he's talking about what sounds like similar things, right, to what these directors are doing. But when he moves into feature directing or even his big television stuff, he is moving into more classical British
places. BBC miniseries type things. Yeah, prestige.
Charles II, stuff like that, right? And Charles II, 2003 is really what gets him, this gig, right? He gets Pride and Prejudice off of that gig. It's a working title film. The time working title is a big name for a certain type of moviegoer, right? Love Actually, High Fidelity, Bridget Jones' Diary, Notting Hill. We're talking about like the Richard Curtis thing has bloomed and blossomed, right?
Good-natured indie comedies with a little British flavor about them. Yeah.
Yes. And I was a person who was really into basically all of those movies. Like, I loved Love Actually. I love Bridget Jones' Diary. I love Notting Hill. Bridget Jones' Diary, which is also basically a Pride and Prejudice movie as well with Colin Firth. There have been other, there's also a time where Shakespeare in Love, Sense and Sensibility, Romeo and Juliet, these movies that are based in this time, which have sort of gone out of fashion for a while, are coming seemingly back into fashion for whatever reason. Obviously, Romeo and Juliet has a certain style to it, which kind of catapults it into insane stars, do
you love that movie? I love that movie.
I love that movie. It's a great movie.
Okay. No, I thought I was right about that.
Yeah, I'm mostly a Baz Luhrmann fan.
Me too. I haven't seen everything, but everything I've seen I've really liked.
Yeah. I didn't really like Elvis that much.
Elvis is the one I haven't seen.
Yeah, but I have sometimes I'm looking for a maximalist guy, and there's nobody does it better than Baz, right? When it comes to that kind of stuff.
No, I think even his Gatsby is really good.
I love his Great Gatsby, and I feel like you're the only other person I've talked to who also likes it.
That liked it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, it's one of those, it's an unfilmable book in some ways, and I think what he did with it, like the things he prioritized, were an interesting take on it, and I like the casting, and it's, if you're gonna do it, do something. I think just a straightforward adaptation of that is not gonna work.
And it's never really worked. The straightforward adaptations have always been kind of boring, so it's like even the Redford one is famously boring. It's such a boring movie.
I've never seen it,
it's such a boring movie.
That's why.
The thing about I promise people who are listening, we're going to talk about Pride and Prejudice. The thing that he gets started about Gatsby is at the time of Gatsby's publishing, it was a transgressive and powerful novel, right? That was breaking a lot of rules and norms. And you can't make them. So if you make a movie now, it's got to also do those things to really capture the spirit of what the book is supposed to be. And he does that in that movie to me. He catches that spirit.
Maximalist, as you said, is a great way to describe that. And I do think there's something to be said about that. You're never going to be able to directly adapt Fitzgerald's prose, but what you can do is, some kind of cinematic equivalent of that, right? Like just colors and effects and just extras as far as the eye can see. And I mean, it's an interesting take on that. And actually, I feel very similarly about Joe Wright's Pride and Prejudice, actually, because it is not the most reverential adaptation of Jane Austen. And it was, I mean, the things that people were saying, you know, producers in the studio, like, we're going to capitalize on this, like, youth market. I don't think you're getting the same audience for this movie that you're getting for, like, Mean Girls.
No.
But they kind of, the way they're talking about it is like, they're going to make this the next, like, big sort of teen movie in the early 2000s, which is insane.
It is insane. Yes.
But I will say, I mean, the approach to something that I do think is, you know, very hard to sort of translate one-to-one to the screen. I think, you know, not that people loved his changes. There were definitely some very vocal critics of what Joe Wright did with this, but it's a take, right? So, you know, it is a story that we're familiar with, but it's a look at it. It's an approach to it that is, you know, kind of shows its own, I guess, directorial stamp or its own kind of singular vision for what this story is supposed to be. And it doesn't take away from the other version. I've never seen that 95 miniseries, the Colin Firth one, which supposedly people say is the best adaptation of it
Yeah,
ever.
that's what people say, yeah.
This is not trying to be that, and I like that about it. This is kind of doing its own thing. It's marching to its own drum, and I like that choice. I like that approach.
Yeah, I mean, one of those things you have to do, right, when you're adapting something that's been adapted several times, right, and an author who is...
Less times than I thought, actually.
Yeah, no, it's not one of the things, but it's one of the most famous books probably ever written by one of the most famous authors ever to live, right?
And as you mentioned, like, elements of it are constantly used for other things. So even if you don't know Pride and Prejudice, the Jane Austen story, you know of it and you kind of know how it works and what it's about. And, you know, things that are inspired or influenced by it, you have seen. So, so you need to somehow deviate from that.
Yeah. And also I would say, I think that if you don't know the novel really, really well and you only know sort of like the broad strokes, watching this movie is not going to give you any like shock about what, oh my God, they said it in the late 1700s instead of the early 1800s. You know, that's that I don't even know.
For a Jane Austen purist, that's a huge fucking deal.
Of course.
And they were upset about it. But I do think, you know, if you're in high school and Pride and Prejudice is assigned reading for you, which it was for me, and I read it. But if you didn't want to read it and you just wanted to see a film version of it, this would mostly get you there.
Yeah, I'm assuming
get at least a B+ on that quiz.
You should probably watch the BBC one if you don't want to read the book. You know,
it's a lot more hours than this.
It is,
this
but
is a pretty streamlined version of the story.
But that's the punishment you need to take for not reading the whole book. You have to watch the miniseries. I would say, like, we'll go through more of the, we'll talk about more of the details as they naturally come up as we go through here. But when I got to ask you first, did you see this movie in 2005?
I did not. This was one of those, no, and I was seeing everything at the time. Okay. I had plans to see it, and I just never got around to it.
So this was your first time watching it?
Yes.
Okay. So I watched it in 2005. I don't think I saw it in the theater. I think I saw it when it came out on DVD. One of my mass catch-ups before Oscar time, because Keira Knightley gets nominated for Best Actress, for this movie. It's one of its few Oscar nominations. And I remember at the time being pretty surprised that she got nominated. But the time, I think I watched it and I liked it. I remember liking it. I remember going like, this is good, but it's kind of exactly what I would expect and kind of basic, and watching it this time, that was definitely, 21-year-old, brain basically going like, this is some boring, kind of buttoned up British shit. Like I can appreciate like the performances and the way it looks, but I'm not like, this is doing nothing different. And watching it this time, I was like, I completely fucked up my analysis of this movie back then. There is so much crazy skill on display for someone's first movie in this movie. The amount of long tracking shots in this movie is unbelievable. Like there are so many,
and not just that they're there, but what this film does with them, right? Like they're Joe Wright himself. So tracking shots became kind of his thing. We'll talk about Atonement next episode, where that movie is famous for its long take. There are nothing quite on the level of that in this movie, but every one of them serves a really interesting purpose. There's conversations that are happening in the middle of a ballroom sequence where there's like hundreds of extras, dancing, and the camera's kind of going back and forth between groups of people, and we're following these conversations. I mean, as you said, the directorial skill here is incredible, and just the sense of time and place in this movie is, like, we all have this very cliched sort of idea of like, what's a British period piece, prestige pick, chamber drama kind of movie like? And, it's so easy to parody, right? It's so easy to think of something like that and look at it in a humorous way. Every show, there's a great SNL sketch about that where everything's a double entendre.
Mm-hmm.
This I forget who the actress was, but she has a fuzzy muff, one of those things that you keep your hands warm with, and she's going on and on about her muff
yeah, of course,
5 minutes of a sketch, and everyone's in the period costumes, everything. So like this movie does such a great job of not being that, right? Like it never feels like that sort of rote costume drama thing, but like this world feels very alive, and it feels because the camera's constantly like kind of bringing us into places, taking us through these estates, from room to room, and following characters around. Like I just wanted to live in this movie. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh man, I wish I had been born in whatever this is, late 1700s England. But boy, would I like to hang out there for a while. And I think that this movie does that so well and brings this world to life just so vibrantly in a way that it never feels like a soap opera. It never feels like a BBC, I've been watching actually some old BBC stuff, and it's great. But, the budgets are small. They didn't have a lot of money to do things. The technology, the equipment, the stuff they were shooting on, it has this certain look about it. And this is just, extravagant visually, but not in a show-offy way either. We are consistently focused on the characters and not the settings, and yet the settings just sometimes, assert themselves because they're just amazing to look at and amazing to sort of explore the way this movie lets us do with that camera work. So yeah, I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was going to, actually, and definitely enjoyed it a lot more than I would have seeing it as, whatever I was, 22 or 23 when it came out.
Yeah. And because, I think like though you mentioned like those tracking shots don't feel showy because they are very focused on character and teaching you things and telling you things about where you are. But I will say again, just about the skill level, yeah, it's not the atonement like you're on a battlefield and there's like bombs raining down or whatever, but there are so many people in these scenes doing really complicated things, and there is like a lot of actors coming off screen and then rejoining the camera at some other point during the tracking shot, to enter another scene, and you're seeing things in the background of scenes that are important to are informing what's happening in the foreground of the scenes. All of this stuff is really, really impressive stuff, and it's a lot of, I have to imagine a lot of takes and a lot of planning, a lot of precision for a $28 million movie, that you obviously have time to do what you need to do, but you don't have like, you don't have 6 months to make this movie, right? So it's very impressive to me.
11-week shoot. That's not much.
That's not much at all for how crazy some of this stuff is.
Period piece. Yeah. It's something with the production design and the costumes of this. Like that's quite an undertaking. It really does. I mean, Pride and Prejudice is a very TV, small screen suitable story, right? But this movie is very much a big screen movie, and it really feels like even though Joe Wright's coming from television, he needs to be on the big screen. Like the stuff that he does in this movie, it has to be in a movie. It has to be cinematic. It has to be, in some way, I guess, maximalist, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would also, if Baz Luhrmann wants to do Pride and Prejudice, I'm down for that. I'd watch that.
I think as well, just, obviously this isn't necessarily on Wright because Wright is obviously not writing the source material. He's not writing the script necessarily, fully, but it's just a delightful movie as well. Like it's very sharp and well written and tight, and the characters are well drawn, and it has emotion, and it's got, pathos, and it's got laughs. Like I laughed a few times watching it, and I think like that really helps the movie as well. Like I kept comparing it in my head to the Gerwig Little Women that came out a few years ago, which I think is an absolute masterpiece of a film. I think it's unbelievably good.
See, I haven't seen that, but my impression of that movie is that it's a lot like this one.
It's similar. Yes.
It's a similar take on, in some sense, similar material.
Yes. It's like the American version of it, right? It's like Little Women's got the American version of Pride and Prejudice in some ways, right? Except it's explicitly non-romantic, where Pride and Prejudice is fully romantic, right? It's hugely romantic. And Little Women is almost like the opposite of that, where it's this character who doesn't ever want what Elizabeth gets at the end of this movie. I don't think Pride and Prejudice is a masterpiece, right? I think it's a wonderful film. And, you know, I think that it is anchored by also two great performances, right? I think that the two lead performances, I think if Macfadyen and Knightley's thing doesn't work, no matter how well it's shot, no matter how well it's written, if they don't work together in those scenes, if you don't believe them, the movie would fall apart.
Yeah. Well, Macfadyen especially, right? Because Darcy is such a like an unlikable character, and you know, by design and through a lot of the story, we're just supposed to not like him. You know, he's not supposed to be appealing to us, and we're sort of questioning what she wants with him at all. And you know, the turn that character makes is really interesting, and I think he does that so well. And there's never a point in this where it's like, oh, I fucking hate this guy, I don't want to look at his face anymore. You know, even when he is kind of cold and a bastard, there's something really interesting about him, and you do sort of get that sense, you know, that there's something more going on there. I would say the supporting cast here, and I didn't know, I really did very little research before I watched it. I thought it'd be fun to go into this a little bit cold. So Donald Sutherland was a surprise. Judi Dench was a surprise. And just all that, you know, Jana Malone and Carey Mulligan and Rosamund Pike. I had no idea any of them were in this movie. It's like, oh, cool. That's quite a cast you've assembled here.
Great cast, a really great cast. And like we said, a lot of them not, like Rosamund Pike's not a star yet. Carey Mulligan's years away from being a star.
Is this, Rosamund Pike was in a Bond movie, and I don't remember which one.
She's in Die Another Day, right? The last Brosnan.
So just before this or just after this?
Just before this, I think.
Okay.
I believe it's just before
this. Because she
looks
quite a bit younger in this, which I guess was kind of the plan.
It could also have been shot, like they could have been shot in different order. You know, who knows with that kind of stuff. She's in that Bond movie.
She was the best thing about whichever one it was.
It's a terrible movie.
I definitely liked her.
One of my least favorite theater experiences.
That's the Halle Berry one, right?
That's the Halle Berry one. Yeah, that movie is
the
terrible.
Surfing on the ice floe one. Yeah,
the invisible car, like all the you know, like that kind of stuff. A really terrible movie. She's not a star yet. Like you said, Carey Mulligan's far away from being a star. Jana Malone is at this point like the little indie darling girl who shows up in like, you know, 4 movies a year.
Donnie Darko, that type of stuff.
Yeah, playing one of the most annoying characters in the history, I think, of cinema. Not her, like she's doing what she's being asked to do here, but that character is just overbearing. You know, Tom Hollander, who also was in Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, trying to court Keira Knightley and being rejected, which is really funny.
Oh man, yeah, the insults and the laughs at the expense of his height in this movie, and his I'm a short guy myself, so as we've talked about on the show before, I sort of felt that from Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I mean, Knightley carries the bulk of the movie, right? She's in basically every scene of the movie, and she is truly wonderful in this movie. She is great at all of the shades. There's this moment where she's with her like aunt and uncle, and they go to kind of just walk around Mr. Darcy's house when he's not there. That's something you do.
Yes. Yep. It was open for visitors today. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that was really weird when they just kind of walked in. It's like, here, let's show you this private home.
And the way that she laughs when she sees the house, like, I cannot believe this is the house this guy lives in, right? Like she has this amazing, like multi-layered laugh that she gives. I'm like, this is not something that you can teach like an actress to do, right?
No.
That's one of those things.
And a lot of Elizabeth in this movie, and I guess that's probably true. It's been so long since I've, was forced to read this in high school. So I don't remember much about the novel Pride and Prejudice, but I know the story, enough. The way that Elizabeth has to kind of like react to things and not show her reaction, but she's doing, reactions as kind of an aside to a character that she can kind of show her true feelings to, like one of her sisters.
Yeah.
So you have these ball sequences where someone will say something to her and she has to just kind of like smile and nod and stiff up her lip and whatever, and then she gives a look to somebody else in the scene, and it's just like a momentary thing. It's very blink and you miss it sort of thing, and I love those moments with her. There's a couple of bits with her and the character we were just talking about, Mr. Collins, Tom Hollander, where basically everything he says is like shoot me in the face, and she kind of has to like give that response without showing him, because he is the benefactor. He's gonna inherit the house or whatever, so you have to sort of show your polite face in front of him, but react to him in that way. Yeah, she's absolutely great in this movie, and I agree. I mean, this movie hits the emotional beats, I think, really, really well. I mean, there were some reviews of this that say it's just kind of a lifeless and emotionless version of the story, and I don't think that's true at all.
No, I don't think so at all. Not even a little bit.
Badly wanted this couple to get together by the end. I knew they would. Of course, I know the story well enough to know that happens.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think those closing scenes that are all sincerity and all romanticism, they work great.
Yeah. When you get to yes, exactly. When they really earn it too, you know, they do a great job. And I think in the you know, Jose, you made up one of the things Wright said, right, was like, I don't have 8 hours or whatever to do this, so I've really got to strip away as much as possible that's not about, you know, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. Like, it's got to be about them almost exclusively, right? There's other things going on, right? We have the relationship with the Rosamund Pike character.
And very sharply drawn, but yeah, it is in the background, and we are mostly focused on the two leads, and it works great. I mean, wouldn't want this any other way.
No, and each time they meet as well, couple just things, and again, a lot of this is probably just in the novel as well, but they always the times they meet in the movie, it's all completely different circumstances and different feelings, right, going on, and intentions between them when they're meeting, right? You get the first meeting at the ball, right, where you get, and again, Macfadyen also, obviously, he's very famous now for being in Succession, right? That's the thing he's probably most famous for now. He's wonderful on that show, very funny on that show, right? And this is not a comedic part, but there are times where I think his natural comedic ability sort of comes through, right? And
well, that's true across the board here, right? Like, I got a lot of that from Donald Sutherland as well. He's, you know, I guess, you know, I'm partial to girl dads in movies, but I really, really enjoyed him very much.
Yeah. But the first thing when they meet, and she's like, "Do you dance, you know, Mr. Darcy?" And he's like, you know,
only when I'm forced to.
Only I'm forced to, or whatever. And it's good. It's a funny line. I'm like, this line was written, you know, 300 years ago, 200 years ago, whatever. And it's still, it's funny. Like, the way this writing is sharp and witty, and
nobody's overplaying the comedy here. And I love that about it, right? Like, if they were trying to make this for, like, you know, and I really like Mean Girls. I'm not, but like, that to me is an early 2000s teen movie, right? Like, that is my, you know, it's this kind of subversive, witty, you know, it's Tina Fey kind of doing the thing that she does so well, is satirizing, you know, pretty recognized, you know, it's not exactly observational humor, but it has the sting of truth to it, but it's also very heightened and very sort of, you know, slapsticky back and forth screwball stuff. And this is not that. And boy, it could have done that. And I'm so glad that it didn't, right?
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
There are laughs in this movie, like you said, but they are subtle, as they should be. And we're not kind of overdoing, you know, the silly stuff, which is good, because I think that helps a lot, as we were just saying, when the third act hits and we actually have to really care about these characters. And there's even some moments leading up to that, you know, when Jane gets rejected, or whatever you want to call that. You know, I kind of felt that too.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think they do a very good job of these people, the people they focus on, feeling very real, right? The other people, the other sisters you don't spend a lot of time with, they're much more like, they have a characteristic, and that characteristic is the thing that they always are doing in scenes, right? But you don't have the time to investigate what's going on with all the 5 Bennet children or whatever, you know?
There's some lovely moments with Elizabeth and Jane, though, right? Like, I love the scene where they're like under the covers together, and it's great, lit really nicely, having this very sisterly. I'm saying I'm an only child, so I'll have to ask my wife. She's got 2 sisters, but like, that felt very true to life to me.
Yeah.
Totally not knowing anything about that stuff, but, you know, just sort of sharing their secrets before bed kind of thing. I really liked that.
Yeah, and I think they do a good job too in this movie of sort of addressing the class stuff in it, which I don't know if that's a major part of the other adaptations or of the novel, but
I think it is. I think it has to be.
I would imagine, but you really get the sense, right, of the mother obviously is really keyed up to marry off these daughters, right? Very keyed up. She's probably the most over the top character in the movie.
She's great. Brenda Blethyn is awesome.
I mean, she's awesome in it. Yeah. This is not a criticism of her, but like,
no, we haven't mentioned her yet. And
no, we haven't.
She's one of the highlights of this movie.
Yeah, but the movie does, I think, a very good job of making you understand why she's so keyed up about making sure these people get married off, right? There's really real consequences if
Right. Yeah.
they don't get married. And
well, it's just a practical thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think the movie articulates that really well because people don't think like this anymore. But
Right.
it's like they have to get married so they can have the status and the house and the comfortable life that everybody wants.
Yeah.
Because the choice here is to make their family a little bit poorer, a little more rural. You know, they're surrounded by like farm animals all the time. There's like the geese in this movie give some great supporting performances as well. It's this very earthy sort of take on the Bennet family, whereas, you know, you can also go way in the opposite direction, right? Like, yes, they are of a lower status than like Darcy and Bingley and all those guys, but, you know, they could have a little bit more decorum or something.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that they are a little bit more down to earth. There's a great moment before I forget it, because it's just such a little thing. So it's one of the early, I thought there was going to be more ballroom sequences in this movie, right? Like I kind of thought like every major plot development was going to happen in the context of one of those scenes, because the first half is like that. Then we don't get any in the second half. But in one of them in the first half, it's Brenda Blethyn as the mom, as Mrs. Bennet. She's sitting with like these two other older ladies, and she's drinking wine out of a, you know, fancy silver pewter cup or whatever. And she's talking about like one of her daughters getting married, and her feet don't reach the ground, and she's kind of like dangling her feet in the air like a little child. And I just thought that was such a funny choice.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe because my mom's 4'11", so she has trouble reaching the ground sometimes also. But, you know, it's little stuff like that I think takes these characters who could very easily be, you know, these BBC soap opera mannequins, and just making them feel kind of believable and human and real and fully fleshed out. I think this movie does a great job of that.
I think Wright called it the muddy hem version of the Bennet household,
which we actually see. You know,
Yes.
someone makes that comment as when one of them walks to one of the estates. Like,
Elizabeth,
did you walk
because
here?
she loves walking.
Right.
She loves walking.
Like, oh, look at the hem of her dress, and like, you know, it calls attention to that, and it's kind of a recurring thing in the movie. There's a unnecessarily long shot of a pig's genitals in this, which for a PG movie that my grandmother, when she was alive, probably saw and enjoyed very much, probably a couple seconds less of that would be preferable. But
yeah. So, you know, if people don't know this, we're way into it now, but if people don't know the general story of this is that
give us the cliff notes.
The Bennet family is a family of all girls, right? And their eldest daughter, what's her name?
Jane.
Jane meets this high status person who has come to the country where they live from town. They keep calling it town. I'm assuming town is London, I guess, but I don't know what they mean by town. And basically has agreed to meet with the Bennet daughters, even though he's a much higher status in life than these girls are. He takes a liking to Jane, and you bring along with him, though, is his sister, who's a real piece of work, Mr.
The great
Darcy.
Kelly Riley, yes.
Yeah, who seems also like a pretty big piece of work when you first meet him, right? And their courtship proceeds, but what happens is he rejects her eventually. We find out that Mr. Darcy was the reason that he rejected him, because they didn't approve of her family, but he has fallen in love with Elizabeth and sort of pursues her throughout the movie. And it really comes to the fact where they both realize they've been idiots about a lot of things, and they come together, and it has this big romantic ending. That's really what the story is. I mean, there's a lot of little things that happen along the way, obviously.
It is, but like, I think the thread, particularly with both of them, and another thing that I think this movie gets across very clearly, is they are both much more keenly observing this world and the social stuff and the customs and the rules, because a lot of it's kind of very rules based. And the two of them are both within that and outside of that. And I think that's what makes their relationship really interesting. And I think that's what kind of draws them together, is they're both kind of seeing this in a more complex, you know, more thoughtful sort of way than everybody else. Is like, nope, this is the world, we're born into it, you know, this is how we dress, this is how we behave at these functions. And the two of them do that, but they also kind of see the, you know, the cracks in the facade or whatever. Like, they are a little bit more real in some sense. So like, I think a lot of the interest and a lot of these meetings that they have throughout the movie are all about her. Like, she's interested not so much in getting to know him, but like figuring him out almost.
Absolutely. Yes.
And like, that's what, because she is just so inquisitive, and she is a very intelligent, witty person also. And it's like, I need to just understand why this person is like this, because I think she sees a little bit of herself in him also.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see them just kind of like ping off of each other, pretend to hate each other, even though we kind of know that they both are harboring feelings. Again, as you said, just terrific lead performances in this, and very careful, because, you know, I think you give someone this script, you tell someone about these characters, it's so easy to play this in a much more broad sort of way, and neither one of them is doing that.
No, and I think, you know, Knightley has a very difficult job, right, of being, she has to be, like you said, this very headstrong, very intelligent person, but not fall into the, like, I'm always combative, I'm always a stick in the mud, I'm every little custom I'm gonna call out at every moment, you know. She's not that. She just,
She's not,
be careful not to be that person at all.
She's not
No.
1700s.
But she has these great moments, right, where there's that scene kind of early on when Jane goes to visit, she's called upon by the sister of this rich guy. They can't afford a carriage to take her there, so she has to ride a horse, but it pours rain the whole time. So when she shows up, she's sick. She has a cold, and she's like off her feet for like a week. So Elizabeth comes to visit her there, and when she comes, there's this great scene. They're kind of like in the drawing room or whatever it is, and Mr. Darcy is writing this whole time, and the two women, Elizabeth and the sister, are kind of walking around in a circle, you know, talking. And there's like 6 layers to their conversation, you know, where
they're conversing about the people in the room who are basically still in earshot. But yeah, what is there's a phrase she uses, like take a turn with me or something like that.
That's what she says.
Like this is a thing that people do in these very big houses, is like, I want to talk shit about other people who are here, so let's just walk to the other side of this very large room and circle around it so they can only hear like little bits and pieces of it. I thought that was fun, the way that was staged. I don't know if that was a real thing, but I
don't know either. The dialogue there is very clever, and that is the first time I think you really start to get the chemistry between, you know, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. But there's also this really great moment where Darcy is kind of talking about what he thinks of as an accomplished woman, right? And none of these things apply to Elizabeth, right? And so she kind of like pushes back at him. She's like, I've never met a woman who can do all those things. Like, who is this mystery person, magic person that you're talking about right now? And, you know, he's kind of, you know, taken aback, right, by what she's talking about. And I think that plus earlier on, right, when, or maybe it's like, I don't remember which part it is, but one of the balls where she's like, oh yeah, I love to dance, even if the partner is less than adequate or whatever, because that's what he said about her when she didn't know. You can see him starting to like get interest in her, right, in those moments. But what I think is fascinating, right, about Mr. Darcy, and the reason why you end up never hating him and kind of fall for him as well, is you realize by the end that the person he's talking about when he talks about this perfect accomplished woman is his little sister, right? Is like, that's what she is, right? And so to him, that's like the pinnacle of what a lady should be, and that's like very sweet, right? That is what he has in his head. So when you find that out, much like her, you're discovering these things that you thought were one thing about him that are actually something, you know, completely different, right, about him. And I think that's really fascinating, you know. And also, you know, when he kind of goes at her about her family, you know, at first you're just like her, because you're kind of on her side. You're seeing the world through her eyes. You're kind of like, shut up, man, or whatever. But then when she goes and has that conversation with her dad about her sister going up with the officers or whatever, and her father's kind of like, just let her go or whatever, you're like,
yeah, like she needs to learn.
Yeah, you're like, okay, maybe
that's some parenting.
And you kind of see, you know, Elizabeth kind of realizing, oh wait, maybe Mr. Darcy kind of had a little bit of a point, you know, about some of the things that he was saying. Like, my dad's not a bad guy, but there is a little bit of like, are you really doing your job right now as the dad, you know, to your youngest daughter in this moment? But those mannered scenes, like we're talking about, the one we're walking around, they could easily be very boring, right? They could easily be, you know, treated with white gloves, and this is very proper, and this is like, not only is this something they used to do, but it like wasn't society back then so grand and wonderful, you know. And this, I think, very much has the feeling that Jane Austen probably had at the time, which is, no, this is a bunch of bullshit, you know, like, why would we do this? And I found myself thinking, like, obviously there are other female writers, right, that were writing around that time, some of them not even under their real names, you know, writing under male pen names in order to get published. But, you know, I'm not a Jane Austen scholar at all. You know, I'm not part of the Jane Austen book club
You're not? Shit. What am I doing here then?
But I found myself thinking, like, was this kind of depiction of like what women find romantic, like actually romantic and actually alluring, wildly transgressive at the time, right? Like, where it's like the women weren't allowed to express, right, that the things that they actually wanted in a person,
Yeah,
right?
like Jane Austen was saying what we're all thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm really very wondering, like, you know, how much of that already existed before, in this time period, before she became a very popular writer, right? But yeah, I thought all that stuff was great, and then um, sorry,
I'll push back a little bit on, you said it could be very just, the white glove treatment. It's also that, right? Like, it doesn't have that sort of museum quality about it. This feels like a very lively, sort of very human movie, but also it's stunning to look at. Every second of, every set. Like, I wanted to see a little bit more of that drawing room. I'm an architecture guy. So like, yeah, let's go around this corner again so I could see those columns in the back or whatever. So it is, it's weirdly reverent to that kind of stuff. The production, the clothing and the jewelry and like the just accoutrements of a house like that. Like, the slowest paced scene in the movie is when they actually go to Pemberley and they're just walking around. They're taking a tour of the Darcy estate, and we're just kind of going with them, and following her along in this. And even that I thought was, pretty fascinating for what it was. I wanted to spend a little more time there, and, it kind of stops the movie dead in its tracks, but just everything here just feels so, it's well realized, it's
absolutely.
I hate to use the phrase because it's such a shitty phrase, but it's a really handsomely mounted production.
It very much is. I think I wrote that in my notes, to be honest with you. I think, like...
oh, good. I'm not the only one with that cliche banging around my head.
Definitely not.
Good.
And I should say, like, I don't think it's deconstructing, right, this type of film or production.
No.
I just meant more
I think it has some reverence for this as a style of film.
Yes, a style of film, and I think it loves, like, the way it looks, for sure. It loves, like, the look of this era. But I think it is, like you said, very human in the way that it goes, like, but there are problems, right? There's the muddy hem around this gorgeous, estate. And I like that about this movie a lot. I think that's what stops it from being stuffy and boring, is it has that humanist sort of feel to it. I was like, this dude has a museum to himself in his house. Like, that's crazy. It's a great scene though, because when she's looking at the bust or whatever, and you're seeing, like, she's talking about how handsome he is or whatever, like, you believe it. You believe her. She's like, yeah. Like, and this is after, we shouldn't skip away, the big, huge scene, right, where he sort of finds her in the rain, right? After there's a little bit of like, oh, maybe something's going to happen, because she comes to this house and she goes to visit. So her friend, rewind, her friend marries Mr. Collins after she denies Mr. Collins in a hilarious...
Her sister marries Mr. Collins.
No, that's not her sister. No, that's a friend of hers.
No, it's the younger sister, isn't it?
No. It's a friend of hers. It's that friend she's always meeting up with at the balls and stuff like that, when they're kind of commiserating. It's definitely not her sister. It's definitely not her sister. Because she says, I'm 27. I can't be waiting any longer. So there's no way she's a younger sister, right?
I thought she was. But
no.
That's just me.
No.
Oh, no. I'm racist against British people.
Yeah,
they all look the same.
Yeah. I was wondering why you're looking at me so weird. I was like, you don't remember that Mr. Collins married somebody else? So we didn't really even talk about the proposal scene when Mr. Collins actually proposes to Elizabeth, but it's a great scene. Tom Hollander just has, like, a wonderful, weird energy about him when he's in anything, and he really brings it here. He's like, he comes off as like a little weasel at first, and by the time you get to know him a little better, you realize that's not really what he is, right? He actually is kind of genuine, right, about how he feels.
Incredibly socially awkward, and has has an opinion of himself that is not commensurate to what he actually is.
No, but even her, what I like about...
There's a great line, great moment when he first arrives at the Bennet house, and it's like, I thought I would read for an hour or two. I thought I'd read to you for an hour or two after dinner. I'm like, oh God, like some religious sermons about something. It's like, don't ever invite that guy to your house.
No, and then you hear one of his sermons later, and then everyone's like falling asleep in the church. But you know, this proposal scene, which again, it's one of those great tightrope scenes, which I'm sure is right in the Austen novel, where Elizabeth, you know, could be mean in that scene, right? She could be mean, and she's not mean. She's like, listen, man, like, this is not the right thing. Like, I would not make you happy.
I am the last person in the world who would make you happy.
Yeah.
Which she's right about,
yes,
actually.
she is. She's very right about it. He's like, oh, you're just trying to lead me on or whatever. And she's like, look, no. She's like, I would not do that to you. She's like, whether or not I want to marry you, I'm not going to disrespect you by trying to lead you on. Like, that's not what I would do, basically. And we had a great scene with Donald Sutherland where he's like, you know, if you don't marry this man, your mother will never speak to you again. And if you do marry him, I will never speak to you again.
Yep.
And that great moment when she's like, oh my God, like, thank God, like, I don't have to do this, right? Great moment. But, you know, her friend marries him and asks her to come visit, right? And again, it's great because it's not like awkward or weird. Like, Mr. Collins is like very happy that she's there. And this is when we meet the Judi Dench character. And I totally forgot Judi Dench was in this movie. I had seen the movie, right? But I totally forgot she was in it. And this is one of the times, too, where I think how good Knightley is in this movie really comes into focus, which is that she's in 2 big scenes with Judi Dench. And she completely holds her own in these 2 scenes against her, like going shot for shot with her. It's like you could easily blown out of the water by Judi Dench in a scene because she gets to come in for 2 little scenes and just
she's great.
Just be over the top. And
she was Joe Wright's choice.
Yeah.
As far as I was reading, he called her up and said, I really like seeing you play a bitch, so come play a bitch in my movie. And she was like, all right.
Yeah.
And she absolutely is a bitch, and she's great at it.
She's great at it. This great little, and this is...
I mean, I love Judi Dench, too. I love grandmotherly Judi Dench, and I also love bitchy Judi Dench.
Yeah.
And you get exactly one of those.
You do, yeah. She never, there's no softness in her in this movie at all.
No.
She's playing sort of, what's his name? Mr. Collins' benefactor or whatever. He like lives
Lady
on her
Catherine
land.
DeBurgh.
Yeah. And
nice house, though.
She's also Mr. Darcy's aunt, and he ends up being there at the house when she's there. And there's this great little charming like after dinner scene where, well, first the dinner scene where basically, the Countess Judi Dench is basically being like, well, of course you went to school a lot. She's like, no. And he's like, but you know how to play music? Not really. But you know how to draw? No. Like that, all that stuff, which I think is really good. They're really fighting back against this propriety, this is the way things have to be. But then Judi Dench makes her play the piano afterwards, right? And she tells she doesn't play it well, right, at all, right? But there's a very cute scene between her and Mr. Darcy, right, where it's the first time you start to feel like, okay, there's like a little something here, right? Like she's starting to soften. He's obviously softened, quite a bit. But then his buddy basically tells her that he saved his friend from a terrible marriage to an untoward family or whatever.
Basically reveals to her that the whole thing with her sister and Bingley is not going to happen because of him.
Because of him, right? Actually, before this, there's another very charming scene where Macfadyen comes to like talk to her and basically says like hello and goodbye and then leaves. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what did you say to him? She's like, I truly have no idea.
Yep.
Very charming scene. Again, you're building it, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, those things are happening.
A jump scare, right? Like she's facing the other direction and then like Macfadyen's like standing right there behind us. Holy shit, where'd you come from?
Yeah.
Like, I guess, again, I mean, the customs and like the idea that you could just walk into people's houses the way people do this, like, and you're constantly running into people that you don't want to see, but it's like, it's all of this huge countryside and yet people keep like banging into each other for some reason.
Yeah, it's really funny. And so
I just like about half hour into the movie, you just accept it. Like, you could just walk in wherever and
people just
show up and say hello. And
I guess if you're rich, you can just walk in anybody's house you want at any point. Like that's what I think
probably
really
still true.
Probably. Elon Musk is here right now. But
I was just gonna say Jeff Bezos is right out in my living room.
I didn't invite him over either.
His bald head. Yeah.
And he's listening to that Bo Burnham Jeff Bezos song on repeat, which is really weird. But so we have a couple really charming scenes in a row, right, where it's like building up to, okay, this is going to happen. And it's funny because again, it's been 20 years since I've seen this movie. I don't really know this book other than seeing the movie, really. So I'm like, what is the thing that like, because it feels like they're about to get together. What is the thing that stops them? And then you have that scene where he tells him about, where his friend tells her about what happened. And then we get this, the rain scene, right, where he chases her out into this like gazebo or whatever, this whatever it is. And it professes her love for him in just the most awkward, like, Like that one of the times I laughed out loud when he's basically like, even though you're a poor idiot, I love you.
I want to marry you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And her reaction is perfect.
Because the dialogue and the performances are super witty, but the setting is gorgeous, right? Like
yes,
it is this just gothic, rainy, British, very sort of British countryside sort of feel.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, it's such a well done scene, and
they're
it's such a great moment.
So good looking.
Yep.
It's like crazy how good looking they both are. They both look great, and you're like, you guys should get together.
Right. And Elizabeth is not supposed to be good looking. She's supposed to be, you know, kind of plain. They call her plain a number of times in this movie. It's like, take a look at her.
Yeah. This is Keira Knightley, everybody.
You're out of your fucking mind.
But it's fine. It's a movie. Like you come to learn those things in movies where you're like, well, this is the plain person, sure, because they don't have blonde hair. Like that is usually like the definition of that in movies like this. But it's such a great scene between the two of them. Like you said, it looks great. This whole movie has that thing to it, like where it's just. There's a scene right at the beginning. Right? I think the first note I wrote was, "Oh my god, this movie looks amazing!" Like at the, the first like two shots of the movie,
the opening shot, the sunrise, over the Bennet estate. My god.
And her walking through the field and walking across that little like plank bridge or their little duck pond or whatever it is.
And we get to know everything we need to know about her.
Yeah.
No dialogue, just this is her reading a book on this estate, and it's like, got it. That's this character.
Yeah. Like there's that other shot where she's like on the swings and she's like spinning on the swings.
Oh,
and
I love that moment too,
so
right? Yeah,
good.
just the way that staged and the sort of surrealness about it, where you can tell like it's taking place over like a very long time, and every time she makes the revolution, like different stuff is happening on either side.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. It's again show offy for sure.
Show offy for sure. Yes.
It is probably unnecessary, but man, is it cool.
It's a cool way to show time passing. It's a cool way to show other than just like a title card or some other way of doing it, you know, where you just like fade to the seasons changing or whatever. It's just it's a really clever way to do it. It really brings you into her perspective too. It really keeps you. One of the things about filmmaking I really feel like is really strong in this, and I think it'll continue in Atonement if I remember correctly, is when you're in a character's perspective, he really keeps you in that character's perspective. There is a lot of perspective shots, you know, with Elizabeth, a lot of really tight close-ups, a lot of behind the back, like her experiencing the world stuff. Like he's very sharp with that kind of thing. Like you really feel like you're going along this journey of this person's life with her, you know, throughout the movie. And, you know, that's...
And just really inhabiting these spaces, too.
Yes.
I mean, this is a very, very visual movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I don't remember this about the novel Pride and Prejudice, but someone, I think it might have been the screenwriter, Deborah Mogach, was talking about how there's very little description in the book. And so it's not particularly visual. It is very... So I remember, you know, a lot of dialogue and a lot of the conflict and the sort of personality in that book comes out in the dialogue, in the words. And so you could easily make a movie based on that is mostly just, a chamber piece, people talking back and forth. And yet this movie, at every turn, it's like, we're going to do that, but also, like, we're going to give you visual stuff that is fascinating to look at, like, in every scene. Yeah. Like, there's not a single moment in this movie where it feels like dry and stuffy and it's like, get me out of here, get me to the next thing,
right?
Because everything's just constantly in movement, and it's just staged in such a way where it's like incredibly energetic for what it is. And you know, I still don't think this was ever going to be like a huge high school teen Friday night movie like I think the producers wanted it to be, but you can tell it is kind of made not for that, like, I was going to say boomer, but like pre-boomer, you know, boomers' parents, you know, my grandparents' sort of audience. Definitely more of a it's got like kind of a more youthful energy about it, which is suitable because it's a youthful story, right? You know, we're following around a character who is young and is, you know, kind of in the prime of her life.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I think that what we mentioned the big fight scene, and that sort of is like this key turning point in the movie, right? Where we now know what the ending of the movie, if you don't already know the story, this is what kind of sets you into the place where this is going to be the point of the rest of the movie, right? We know this now. And that big fight scene between the two of them is great. I really love it. You also obviously have this other storyline that's brewing, which is this sort of British infantryman. Oh my God.
You got it.
Played by Rupert Friend, who also gives her sort of like bad intel about Mr. Darcy, right? His father loved me like a son. He was jealous. His father left me the rectory on their estate because I wanted to be in the church, and Darcy denied me and, you know, sent me away with nothing or whatever. And obviously it's all a lie, but she believes it because she wants to believe it, right? It's like, it's like, I don't like this guy when she hears this news, right? And this is just more reason for me not to like him, right? And she kind of confronts him about that as well, and he doesn't really quite like give an answer then, but in this really great aftermath scene, which is just her sort of staring into this mirror, right? She's like realizing like, man, I said a lot of stuff that maybe I shouldn't have said, and some of the stuff he said, is he right, is he wrong? Also, they have that really hot moment where they're about to kiss, like when they're really going at each other, and then it just doesn't happen, and he kind of backs away. And then he sort of comes in almost like that other scene, right? The jump scare scene. Very similarly.
Just shows up. Yeah.
Just shows up and kind of leaves this letter for her, and basically, and when she turns around, he's gone. And in that letter, he explains basically, this is what actually happened with this soldier. You know.
Yeah, he screwed me over.
He screwed me over. Yeah, he broke my sister's heart. You know, and also, you know, about the other thing, like, look, like, I understand they might be mad at me, but you have to understand why I did it, right? Which is that I really thought I was doing the right thing for my friend, right? It wasn't like, I don't like poor people and you can't marry them, you know? It was just, and she goes back home, and that's when the sister goes away, and, you know, there's like a lot of, you know, sort of internal strife with the family, what's going to happen. Then she sort of goes on this, or Jane comes back, and then she kind of goes with the aunt and uncle. And this is when she goes into the house, and we meet the sister, and Darcy asks them to come to dinner or whatever. And we get another very charming scene, right, where this is about Keira Knightley in these couple of scenes is like just on full charm, charisma, offensive. Like, if you didn't love her before these scenes, like, this is like the time where I feel like you really like fall for her character in a big, big way. And we get this other scene where she gets this letter, right, from her family that her sister has been basically taken away by Wickham, that's the guy's name, who's the officer, the one that screwed over Darcy. But we get this really interesting two scenes laid against each other, which is when she gets this letter and you're waiting to figure out what it is. There's just this wide one-er shot of the aunt, uncle, and Darcy sort of waiting to find out what's wrong. And you're about to get some serious news, right, that's about to happen. But this scene is very much played for laughs. And there's this great bit of physical comedy by Macfadyen where she comes walking around. He like goes to stand up because she's walking in, but she leaves like immediately, and he like immediately sits back down, but he does it in a very like awkward, weird way.
Are you talking about the scene where I like the way this was staged too? I think it's the same scene where they're in this big room where there's like a fireplace in the middle of it, and she kind of walks behind this partition, like they're waiting for her to say something, and she just kind of disappears to the other side of the room, even though it's the same room. I love the way that was staged.
And he has this very funny, like, kind of like, oh, I'm gonna get up, nope, not gonna sit down now, like, you know, like this very mannered sort of comedy of manners sort of moment, and then one of those funny things where it's like, man, at a certain time, this was a real big deal, which was that this woman ran away, this girl ran away with this guy, and they're not married, and it's going to shame the whole family because nobody will marry another woman in a shamed family. How the word about a family being shamed gets around to like every person in this era, I don't know. But
I mean, they're always constantly seeing each other everywhere they go. So I'm sure word travels pretty fast.
Lots of letters being sent around.
Yeah. What else is there to do?
Exactly. You're right. There was one moment where they're showing another one of these one-er shots where it's like starts on a crane and comes down, and you're seeing like the bedrooms, and the one sister is just reading to the other sister to help her like fall asleep or to like just like, you know, for entertainment. And I'm like, man, I cannot imagine how boring it was to live during this time. And I guess you didn't know any better, right? But it's like, there are so many things for me to do and entertain myself every single day that I can't even do all of them. And this person's like, my sister will just read a book to me while we sit in bed.
Mr. Collins will read to you for 2 hours from some religious text. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, man,
it's a fun night.
What a time.
No wonder they enjoy the balls so much.
Yeah. But so then again, this is one of the times where Darcy gets to kind of show how much he cares about Elizabeth, which is they find out that they've kind of absconded together, and this younger sister and this guy that was sort of interested in Elizabeth was sort of interested in him, and then he ends up going with the younger sister, and Darcy basically, unbeknownst to Elizabeth at first, basically pays off this guy so that he'll marry the younger sister so that their family won't be shamed, right? There's kind of a pretty funny discussion between Elizabeth and Jane, like about how much money you'd have to pay in order to get married to their younger sister, who they know is a piece of work, which I thought was pretty funny. But then Mr. Bingley comes back and basically resumes his courtship with Jane, and we get another couple of really charming scenes where they come and like everyone's a little awkward, and then you get this great scene like with Macfadyen and him where they're out by this lake and they're like practicing. He's like practicing how to talk to Jane and like ask her out, which I thought was very cute. You know, we get the scene basically where he comes and proposes. Bingley comes and proposes to Jane, and in this moment, like, you know, Elizabeth's looking for Darcy, like hoping he would be there, right? And he's not there, right? You kind of see a shot of him like looking at the house and sort of like walking away. And she sort of like runs out of the field, you know, in the field or whatever. I guess, wait, no, she runs away. Nothing happens. She's like sitting on a tree by a tree or whatever. Comes back. She kind of has a giggly moment with, you know, with Jane, where she's engaged now. Everything's good. Everything's happy. Everything, you know, we're all good.
Can you die from happiness, she says?
Yeah, can you die from happiness? And then the next day, Darcy, which this scene is so fucking romantic and sweeping and great, shows up in this field wearing a hell of a coat, and they have this great, you know, basically very romantic, we realize that we're both idiots and we love each other and we want to be together scene, which I really, really love. And then I think we do get, with all these great scenes, I think the next scene is the best scene in the fucking movie, where they have to get the permission from the dad to get married. And she goes in there after him, and the dad is like, "Are you crazy? Like, I thought you hated this guy." Oh, she's like,
right. We see Darcy walking out of the father's room, and then she walks in to sort of get the verdict. Although the look he gives her on the way out tells us what we need to know.
Yeah. But it's like, you know, the dad is like, "I thought you hated this guy. Like, why are you doing this? I know he's rich, but that doesn't, like, don't worry about that," or whatever. And, you know, she kind of explains why she was wrong about him. And, you know, and then there's this just wonderful fucking moment where she's basically like, "I love him." And the dad is so thrilled that one of his daughters is marrying somebody
for love rather than status and money. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, she gives him all the reasons why. And he starts like crying. I definitely got emotional during this scene.
Oh yeah, I
sure.
really, really like him in this movie. I like the character. I like the performance a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful scene, and really, you see the connection between the two of them, and how much he really loves her, and how much he has realized from the beginning that she was sort of like special and different, and like, you know, not the kind of person who was going to just marry somebody because it was the easy thing to do.
For the reasons everyone else is doing it in this movie and kind of in the world at the time.
Yeah, and I think it's just a wonderful scene between the two of them. These two people obviously understand each other.
And this was the original ending for the movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
So there's one scene after this. It's Elizabeth and Darcy together after all this has happened. There's one kind of last lovely romantic moment, you know, sun setting behind them, kiss scene. It's really nice.
Yes.
But like a lot of people, you know, again, those Jane Austen purists, I guess, really didn't like this scene. And, you know, this was included, this additional scene of the two of them together, because it's a romantic comedy. You kind of have to end the movie with them. But the film was supposed to end with the scene with the father. And I think that would have been really nice, as nice looking and as sort of charming as that last scene is. And then I guess the British audiences didn't get it and then complained. So they put it back in and even showed that over there. So, you know, I guess nobody really knew what they wanted out of their 2005 Pride and Prejudice. But, you know, I think it works either way. But it would have been pretty gutsy to end the movie with that scene.
Definitely a more artsy way to end the movie for sure, with the dad scene. And it definitely is like the emotional.
And you're right. It's such a good scene.
It's such a good scene. But it's a nice little just like palate cleanser to see them together and like see what their life is a little bit, you know, and see that they actually are happy together. And let's just end it on that really nice note.
It's not like it's not a Return of the King, you know, it's not three endings. It's pretty restrained for what it is. I don't know why anyone would take offense to it, but people did.
That's interesting. You know, it's funny because when I was looking up something, I forgot what I was looking for. I saw a U.S. version of 2005 Pride and Prejudice. I was like, what does that mean? U.S. version? Now I know. Oh, actually, one scene we skipped over, which I do want to mention, which is the second scene with Judi Dench, was when she shows up. Again, rich person just showing up at somebody's house being like, "I need to talk to you."
Yeah, it's like 4 a.m.
Yeah. This is really the scene where Judi Dench is giving it everything. Like, she is, you know, giving it 110%.
Oh, she's
acting.
Fucking dastardly in this scene. Yeah, she is. Like, she needs to play villains more.
Yeah. And Knightley gives it back to her just as much, and it's great.
You've insulted me. Yeah.
Yeah. Insulted in every way imaginable. I think she says, get out.
Yep.
Like that. Really, really great. And I love that the dad is like, what is going on? And she's like, well, just leave me alone for once. She like runs up the stairs, basically.
It's a lot of feminine energy that guy has to deal with in his life. You can see it's really taking its toll on him.
Yeah, he just sort of sits there most of the time. Like when they're when Mr. Collins is going to propose and he's like, can I speak to Elizabeth privately? And the mother's like, everybody get out of this room right now. And he's like, what?
Yeah, he's a little bit of a sitcom dad. Well, like seeing this and enjoying it as much as I did, like you really realize how many cliches, how many sort of things that we are familiar with from this type of story, you know, romantic comedies, even romantic dramas, the contrivances and, you know, will they or won't they? And, you know, what is keeping these two people apart from each other when they clearly are meant to be together? Like all of that comes from this story, right?
Yes.
Like you don't have any of those movies. You don't have any of that working title stuff. Like it all goes back to Jane Austen. And I think this movie nicely sort of plays off of that, right? Like it is reverential enough to sort of, you know, not necessarily make that feel new, but make that feel like the important thing that it is. Like, right? Like the proto story for all those other things we like are here. So we are going to do a version of that gives you that, like in the best way we can.
Absolutely. And funny enough,
we're not going to go against it.
A movie that when we're recording this, we both just recently saw, Nosferatu, I feel like is kind of similar in this way, right? Which is like, it's like, yeah, all of these things that have been in all of these movies, yeah, they might seem like you said, cliches now, but they come from this
You're talking about the original story, yes.
Yes, the original story. With Dracula, obviously, is the original story. Nosferatu is like a weird, you know, like I think someone called
copyright-free version.
Someone called it the Temu version of Dracula. Is basically
sure.
That's the story, basically. But what I'm saying is like that is what it is, right? The text is this text. So yeah, you could go ahead and change it for change's sake, and so many things have done that.
Yeah, but you don't go to a movie like Nosferatu to be surprised.
Exactly.
And I don't think you go to a movie like Pride and Prejudice to be surprised. Because if it is going to take a left turn, then it's like, well, what's the point, really? Yeah.
And the little things he did change, people are like, oh my God, how dare you?
Like, I haven't seen Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, but like,
no, me neither.
I feel less inclined to see that now that I've seen this and I like this so much. I'm like, nah, I get what that is, and fine, but not for me.
You should see the Gerwig Little Women, though, for sure.
I would like to see that, yeah.
Really does have a lot in common with this movie, but she does. I think she also took some liberties with the ending of the story as well.
Well, I have never read Little Women, so
okay. You've never seen any of the movies before either?
No, I don't think I have.
Interesting.
Yeah,
can't believe you didn't see the 90s one with Winona Ryder and like Ethan Hawke and like that. Oh my goodness! But she also did a big thing. She did a big thing with structure in that movie, which is super fascinating. Which is that it is told like out of sequence, where the original is just like from the time they're young to the time they're older. It follows that you see like, you know, when they're older, and then it flashes back to when they're young, and it goes back and forth. It's like it's made that way, and which makes it feel really fresh and new in a lot of ways. And this obviously, this is much more like, no, we're just going to do the thing, right? That this thing is. But I think they both are evidence of this idea, which is that great stories and great characters can be relevant no matter when they're from and when you're doing them, right? As long as you are not you're not bringing this stuffy sort of preciousness to the way you're making the film. It needs to be human. You need to, like we're talking about Gatsby, same thing. You need to get on the level of what the book and the story was when it was written, and not in this sort of like, oh, it's a classic and it's been around for hundreds of years, and we need to treat it like it's this precious object and do everything so beautifully, and you know,
right, but you can't just be postmodern pastiche parody.
No,
either, right? Like that's like if it's just a piss take on that classic story, like that's been done, right? Like you mentioned before, right? What this movie is doing is not a deconstruction of Pride and Prejudice. It's pretty earnest in what it's doing. Like you get the sense that everyone involved, the screenwriter, the director, the actors, they like Jane Austen, right? Yeah. Like they've read this book and they've appreciated it. They know what it's trying trying to do. That is what they are, I mean, they're paying tribute to it in a way that doesn't feel like they're just, paying it lip service, right?
Right. But you got to treat these people like they're real human people, right? And that's what I mean by not treating it in a way that you have to feel detached from it, right? Which is, I think when people get bored by these type of adaptations is a lot of what people get bored by, right? Is Jane Austen, when she's writing this book, is not thinking like somebody from 200 years later looking back on how wonderful all of this was, right? She's writing a story just like anybody's writing a story in a time, where it's her reality that she's sort of, commenting on. And I think adaptations that are great for classic literature like this try to capture that same energy, right? And that's what this definitely does.
And it modernizes in a way where it's not like, this is, I don't see a lot of the world of 2005, which I felt very alive at that time. So like, I remember what the world was like in that period very, very, very vividly. And I don't feel like this movie is necessarily trying to comment on this. It's not trying to be a modernization of, this is Pride and Prejudice for the post 9/11 generation.
No,
like,
not at all.
Let's not do that. And any innovations that it's doing are there to serve the original story, and they're to sort of capture the things about the original. I mean, it's a coming of age story, right? Like it's a film about, young people trying to decide what the rest of their life is going to be and who they're going to spend it with. And that is, pretty universal. Like that
absolutely
still exists in the world. We maybe don't marry for money and status the way we used to. Unfortunately for my wife, she should have found a nobleman, but she didn't. No. She found a film student.
Yeah. Is your family paying you an allowance every year?
I fucking wish they were. No, they are not. There is no estate to inherit. But, I do think there's something kind of timeless about, just that period of one's life. When you don't know who that person's going to be and whether you're ever going to find that person and, are you doing it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? Like, I think this movie is very, very good about making it feel relatable without just sort of hyper modernizing it.
Absolutely. Yes, I completely agree. And the concept of the things you believe when you're young, not necessarily being the truth, right? Learning things, learning that there are shades and there are differences and there are misunderstandings that maybe your narrow view at the time didn't see the whole picture of, right?
Sure.
I think
putting on airs for people and then conducting yourself in public and in private differently. Yeah, I mean, all of that is here.
Yeah, and these are all things, right, that are relevant now in many ways. But like you said, you don't have to go like, but let's, set it in New York in 2005.
This character is a thinly veiled George W. Bush.
Exactly. You don't have to do that because like we said, great stories, great characters, they're universal no matter what. Even if there are little things about them that are different, you look through those things to see like the person inside and you realize people have always kind of been the same, regardless of, the era. People pretty much have been the same. What's acceptable and what's not and stuff like that stuff changes, but the way people are doesn't truly change.
And that's why you can watch this movie in 2025, 20 years after it came out, and it feels very fresh. Yeah. It feels, like I said, timeless. Whereas if it was trying to comment on the world at that time, there would just be, references you wouldn't get. There would be things in there where it's like, I'm not familiar with this particular cultural thing that they're satirizing or whatever. I hate, like you see a movie and you see the year when it came out, like 80s movies, right? And like you expect them to have that sort of music video aesthetic and be, that sort of Coke Vision thing that 80s movies, that Tony Scott like amped up sort of style of the 80s. And then, you see it and it's like, oh, no, they weren't going for that. Like they made a point to make this a movie that sort of stood outside its time. And I really like that. I also like movies that are very distinctly of the era they were made.
Of course.
But, something like this, I think really benefits from having that timeless quality about it.
Yeah. I mean, I also like deconstructions. I also like postmodern pastiches as well.
I do too, but it has to be done the right way. And this was, you can't do both. You can't have it both ways.
No, you can't. And look, if this is an American movie, maybe it goes more in that direction too, right? That's the thing. But I think also having, we didn't mention this before, but having someone like Emma Thompson basically coming in and sort of advising and ghostwriting your script.
Well, it's because she'd done Sense and Sensibility.
Yes.
So, like, she's your Austen go-to person at this point. And, like, you almost have to kiss the ring a little bit.
Do.
Like, Emma, can you take a look at this? Because I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this movie premiered at the Toronto Film Festival on September 11th, 2005. It's released on September 16th, 2005 in the UK and Ireland. And it earns $4.6 million US dollars in UK and Ireland, which is very big debut for England. If you don't know, like, that's huge. That's a huge debut.
Yeah, you don't have that many screens.
No, not that many screens, not that many people. Released in the US on November 11th, 2005, 2.9 million on 215 screens. Later expanded, and it made about $40 million in America, which is very good. $28 million budget. Obviously, it made stuff overseas as well. 82% Metacritic, 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Best Actress for Knightley, which again is a big deal at the time because she is incredibly young, incredibly new, and
I think she was one of the youngest.
She's got to be one of the youngest
To
because
be nominated at that
when
point.
she did
We've got a
Pirates,
few since then, but
she was like 20 or something when she did Pirates. So she's got to be like 21, 22 when she does this. Best art direction, best costume design, and best original score. All things that you could pretty much
love
bang
the
on.
score, by the way. I haven't mentioned that.
Oh, yeah.
But really, really nice. The piano stuff that plays for this movie is fantastic.
It's Dario Marinelli, right? Is the score.
Yeah.
Cinematographer also very good, Roman Osen. And I was like, I wonder if this became like Joe Wright's guy. Nope.
No, and I
Didn't work
was
with him
looking
again.
at other stuff he had shot, and I was like, not much of note there.
No, he did the Young Victoria, which obviously, you do that, and then you do Pride and Prejudice, and then they're like, okay, I guess you're going to do the Young Victoria next. But Dario Marinelli works with Wright a lot after this. So he does Atonement with him, which is also a fantastic score. The score for Atonement is wonderful. We'll talk about that next time, obviously. Does the
Looking forward
Soloist
to
with him.
seeing that film again. Yeah.
He does a lot of stuff. There's Anna Karenina with him. Basically worked with him in all his movies, essentially. It's a great score. But best art direction, best costume design, that's like, the movie could have been a piece of shit, and it would have been nominated for those two things if it looked the way it looked, right? And yeah, and it has staying power, right? It's one of those things where, what I hear from a lot of people, right, is that, again, Pride and Prejudice is not a big touchstone story in my life, but for people who it is, it's like basically whatever Pride and Prejudice you see at a certain age is the one that becomes like your Pride and Prejudice. So for some people, that's the BBC miniseries, and for some people, that is this movie. And when people talk about this, this movie,
I feel like our generation, it's this movie,
Yeah.
and even younger people, because there hasn't been one, right?
Yeah.
This is still the sort of going Pride and Prejudice.
And I think also the success of Succession and Macfadyen breaking out in that made people go like, wait a second, like, what has this guy done
where
before?
Where does this guy come from?
Yeah, and then they're like, whoa, like, because even I, who had seen this movie and I was watching Succession, I was like, this guy's amazing. Have I seen him in anything before? And I was like, oh my God, he was Darcy in the 2005 Pride and Prejudice, which I did not remember at all.
Can I make an embarrassing confession?
What?
Have not seen even a frame of Succession.
I think you told me this last time when we were talking about doing this movie. I think you mentioned that to me, which,
Okay.
I mean, you should see that show. I mean, I think you would love it, but that's sort
I
of
will.
like,
Really, really like Sarah Snook. She's in a movie called Predestination,
amazing.
which is like the best time travel movie that nobody's ever seen, and you should see it.
she is fantastic actress, fantastic.
I had no idea who she was till I saw that, and then I saw she was in the show and never watched the show.
She's so good. She's such a good actress. Everybody in that show just knocks it out of the park. Jeremy Strong is great, obviously. Sure to be, again, I don't even know when this episode is going to come out, could already be Oscar winner for Best Supporting Actor. Kieran Culkin is also great in that show. Truly, truly a fantastic thing. But I feel like it's one of those things where I often hesitate to mention to people who say they haven't seen it because I'm like, what am I? I'm what am I, the 7,000th person to tell you that Succession is good? Like, I'm not telling you anything you don't know already, right? Like, Succession is great, but you should watch it. Matthew Macfadyen, fantastic. So next time we're going to talk about Atonement, which is Joe Wright's follow-up, which I really feel like at the time made people go like, oh, this is going to be one of the guys, right? This is 2 movies in and we're like, we're full on Oscar.
Well, we didn't mention, so he does the TV film, the Charles II thing. That wins, the equivalent of an Emmy over there. So he's already, an awards bait kind of guy when he makes Pride and Prejudice. But yeah, I remember like not knowing much about him at the time. I remember thinking that about him, right? Like, oh, okay, we're going to get Joe Wright movies like showing up for Best Picture pretty much every year now.
Yeah. And it didn't really happen after Atonement, but we'll get into that.
No, I will say this is one of the careers, like almost everything else we've talked about has had some sort of redemptive arc. This one, maybe not.
We'll see. There's a lot of movies in the later stages of his career that I have not seen.
Same here.
But
there's a lot of movies in the later stages of career that like nobody has seen.
That's true.
So
yes,
that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. But yeah, and we get basically the first film performance of Saoirse Ronan in the next movie, which is the arrival of someone who is still around and is still an Oscar
awesome.
darling.
Yeah.
But I might have burned all my Little Women talk on this episode, so I don't know if I can talk about it next week, but she's fantastic in that movie. But Keira Knightley and James McAvoy, very excited to see that movie. I have not watched it since 2007.
I haven't seen it since it came out, and I hope it holds up because I remember really, really loving it that year.
I saw it in the theater when the year it came out, and I remember really loving the first half and not loving the second half as much. But again, long time ago, I'm looking forward to watching it again.
You're a different person. It's a different world.
Exactly.
I love, movies change because we change, and you can never see the same movie twice because you'll never be the same person twice. It's that old stepping foot in a river thing, and it's pretty fucking cool about movies.
It is. And this movie, like, I'm watching it, I'm like, man, this is like a great, like, you're a little sick, and like you just want to put on something that's sort of like comforting and warm.
Not going to assault your senses in any way. Yeah.
Not
going to upset you.
Exactly. Just gonna put this on. At the end, you're gonna be like, man, that was good. That's how I felt watching the movie. I was like, I was like, it was like 2/3 of the movie, and I was like, man, this is just good. Like, this is just a good fucking movie.
I was sick a couple weeks ago after Christmas, and my comfort movies were the Friday franchise. And boy, are those great movies to watch in like 10-minute intervals while you're, maybe going to run and throw up in the bathroom. But in between, it's like, oh, here's Ice Cube and Mike Epps just fucking around. That's a good time.
I haven't seen any of the first one.
Oh, really?
No,
so you've never seen Mike Epps in a Friday movie?
No, I've never. Chris Tucker is what I think of when I think of.
Yeah, well, he only did the one. Yeah, I mean, they're all, I wouldn't call any of them great movies, but I find them all very enjoyable.
When I was like 13, I thought the first one was hilarious, but I don't.
Of course.
Yeah, but I don't really. Again, it's been a really long time since I've seen any of those movies. So next week we do Atonement, and then we're off. I think for Atonement is Hannah. I think is that this third movie?
I believe so. Yeah.
I need to look because I need to know. Let's see.
I feel like there might be one more in between there.
Atonement's definitely very
next.
Possible. Oh, yeah, there is something right in the middle of it. Yes, The Soloist is in between.
Okay.
So
I definitely saw The Soloist. I remember nothing about it.
It's gonna be. We're really gonna talk about an arc of a career here, right? Because it's a fascinating career, like you mentioned, and I think he runs into the movie industry changing right in the middle of his like career, right where he should be going up, even if he has little bumps along the way. And at some point, the movie industry completely changes, like right around 2010, 2011. And you can definitely see like the kind of movies that I make, nobody watches anymore, but I'm going to keep making them and see what happens, So I think it's going to be fascinating to talk about that stuff and see if the diminishing viewership is deserved because the movies aren't as good, or it's just you're like, man, like Anna Karenina is great. Like, why isn't anybody talking about this movie? Like I'm really fascinated to see if that's the case or not. But we'll continue with Joe Wright, and then we'll see what happens after that. Right now, our like tournament is running about who the big director is going to be. We can't comment on who's winning or who won. But I'm sure by the time this episode comes out, it'll be over, and we already know who the big director is we're going to be covering this year. But I'm really fascinated to see what that ends up being. So that should be fun.
And I'm fascinated to make generic statements about who it is when we don't know who it is over the next few weeks.
I can edit it in to be like, man, I'm so happy that won.
Black.
All right. So Atonement next week. Until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
And thank you to everybody who's been listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.